The first one here says match the following graph with its function. Now, remember, when we have a graph like this, or a graph like this, whatever it may be, where is our asymptote? On the x-axis or the y-axis? On the x-axis. So is it horizontal or vertical? It's a horizontal asymptote. And what's it at?
0.
Which is 0? If it's the x-axis, what's 0 on the x-axis? X or y? What's 0? What is 0 on the x-axis? The x values or the y values? The y. Like if I pick this coordinate here, it's at -4 and 0. All my y's are negative, or all my y's are 0 there. So the horizontal asymptote is y equals 0. It's the x-axis. The x-axis is y equals 0, and the y-axis is x equals 0. Now, remember, if you have a horizontal asymptote and y equals 0, it's an exponential function. Now, exponential functions, this red function, is this a growth or a decay function, the red one? It's a growth. And so when I'm using the y equals a, b to the x, if it's a growth function, then for the red one, b would be greater than 1, correct? Your base would be greater than 1. The black one is a decreasing function, correct? It starts really big and then gets really small after a while. What's my b value when you have a decreasing function? Do you remember? Between what and what? Greater than 0, less than 1. Yeah. So I know this is an exponential function because it has a horizontal asymptote at y equals 0. So this one's out and this one's out. And then I know because it's a decaying function, it has to have a b value between 0 and 1. And remember, it's in the form y equals a b to the x. So my b needs to be between 0 and 1. So which one does that fit, A or C? A. For exponential functions and only exponential functions, what does my A give me? Remember? Your y-intercept. So it's at 0 and 3, which this one is. So that guarantees it. Now this one, it wants us to determine the y-intercept of the exponential function. Even if you forget that the a is the y-intercept, what should you think if someone says y-intercept to you? What should immediately pop out of your mouth? Something equals 0. X equals 0. So the moment you hear y-intercept, I always box it and put x equals 0. So if I want the y-intercept of this and I don't know that 4 is the y-intercept, I can solve for it. So I can do f of x equals 4, bracket 1/2 times 0. What is anything to the power of 0? 1. So this becomes a 1. And what's 4 times 1? 4. So my y-intercept is at 0, 4. So whenever you have a y-intercept, you can just plug in 0 for x every single time in any equation, right? But in exponentials, we do know that this, in this form, is our y-intercept. Three wants us to rewrite this as a single log function. Base b, base b. So that screams, put me together. But I can't be put together if they have numbers in front, correct? What can I only have in front in order to put them together? Ones. So you need to have the same base and ones in front. So what do I do with those numbers in front? So that I do get a 1 in front, yeah? Yeah. Move them up to the exponent through the power rule. So this comes up here, the 2 comes up here, and I'm left with log base b. Does the x cubed go in the numerator or the denominator? Numerator, because there's a plus 1 in front. So I get an x cubed up here. This one has a minus 1 in front, so the y squared goes to the denominator. This one, we can solve by common base, or we can solve by converting it to a log. Either way, we would get it. Now, 32 is 2 to the what? What is 32? 2 to the 5, right? So if I had 32, I could write it as 2 to the 5. I could do this. But is 2 to the 5 helpful in the denominator? No. So what we need to know is, if we move it to the, am I going to record? If I move it to the numerator, how do I move it to the numerator? Do you remember? Put it up as what? 2 to the what? Negative 5. So if you want to move a base upwards, you can move it up by raising it to a negative exponent. Okay? And now can we solve it easily? Yeah. Base 2, so we can set our exponents equal. 3 minus x equals negative 5. Subtract 3. I get negative x equals negative 8. Divide by negative 1. X equals 8. Can we check our solution if it's a multiple choice? Can we check it? How do we do it? Yeah, y1, y2. Try it out. See if you get 8.
When you like flip the like 2 to the negative 5, if you flipped it 2 to the 5, could you put the negative like 2 to the negative 3 plus x?
Yeah, I just think we
Okay.
keep the 5 on the bottom instead.
No, like you had 2 to the 5.
Well, if you have 2 to the 5, if you kept it on the bottom, you could make the 2 on the top go to the bottom by making it 2 to the negative 3 plus x. And then the root match.
So you couldn't just have 2 to the negative 3 plus x equals 2 to the 5?
Yeah. It has to apply the one that you're moving. You get an 8? Second choice 5, enter. Yeah. Okay, this one we type it into our table. What do we do with this 5? Where do we put it? Trick question.
Omit it. Omit it.
Omit it. Yeah. Don't even put it in. Because if you put it in, you won't have a y that goes with it. It's funny that showed break your bone in French, because we were looking that up earlier. If you put the 5 in, you won't have a y that goes with it. And if you put 0, then you're saying that 5 goes with 0, which it doesn't. So if you ever have an x or a y that doesn't actually have a matching x or y with it, you omit it from your list. So everyone's typing it in quickly. Are we getting an exponential equation or a log? What does it say? What word is above the table? Exponential. And this is decaying because I'm starting with 6144, then 1536, then 384. Then 96, then 6, so I'm decreasing quickly, 1.5. So stat, calc, and then I'm picking 0. So for this test, you're either picking 9 or 0, correct? If you're picking anything other than 9 or 0, you're wrong. So don't. Because 9 is Lonrig. So here we have y equals 24,576, 0.25 to the x. Is how mine looks on my calculator, which is the same as this, 24,576, 0.25 to the x. Now before we actually answer any questions on this, I want you to tell me what the heck these things are. What does this represent? Yeah, your initial value, your y-intercept. This is just your initial, which is your y-intercept. Your initial value. So if this was talking about like bacteria and it was decaying, the initial value at time 0 would be 24,576, right? That's always your initial. We agree? My B here falls between 0 and 1. So I know that this is a what exponential function? What type of exponential function is it? Yeah, it's either decreasing or it's decaying, right? It's going downwards, right? So this is the question that comes up all the time. By how much is it decaying? People will tell me 25%. The decaying rate or the growth rate is how far away it is from 1. So if it's growing, it's going to be above 1, correct? If it's decaying, it's going to be below 1. How far is 0.25 away from 1? 0.75. So this is actually 0.75 away from 1. So it's decaying by 75%. People will tell you whatever this number is, and they'll say, oh, it's decaying by 25%. No, it's not. 25% is what's left. It's decaying by 75. It's how far away it is from 1. Because remember when we talked about decaying rate, we would always go 1 minus the rate in our formula on the formula sheet when we did those word problems about depreciation. We do 1 minus the rate. So it's how far away it is from 1, not what actual number is there. Now this one says determine the missing value. So what is it for 5? What did you get? A, B, C, or D? D. Okay. Here we have Dennis recently spent $120. Whoa, that's not true. $1,280 on a new laptop. So this is the initial. For his home business, you are not. If you get the formulas, you're in luck. Most of the time, you don't. You need to memorize them. He reads that the depreciation rate, so that tells me it's decreasing. So I'm going to have final equals initial, 1 minus the interest rate to the n. That's what this depreciation tells me. I need to do 1 minus. Because 1 represents 100%, and I'm going to be below 100. Bless you. And he reads that depreciation rate for this model is 25%. So do I put 25% in this bracket, or do I go 1 minus 0.025? 1 minus 0.25. So how much is actually left? So in this case, 75% was left, but it depreciated by 25%. You see that? So it's how far away it is from 1 is how much it depreciated. Okay. How much money should Dennis expect to sell his laptop for in 3 years? So he wants to sell his laptop in 3 years. He wants his final amount. 3 years is here. He spent $1,280. Do I have to do anything here, or can I just type it into my calculator because it's all on the one side? You can just type it in. And your final amount is $540. Okay, then we're going to flip over. Okay, this one wants me to get X. Could I just plug these in and see which one gets me left side equals right side? Yeah. Or I can convert it to a log, right? Because I can't do common base. The log conversion is y equals a to the x. X equals log base a of y. And what you could do as well is you could y1, y2 this too. That would be another way you could have done it. y1, y2 and find it that way. So we're going to get y equals a to the x. And then we get x equals log base a of y. And so we get x equals log base 2 of 12. Everyone type that into your calculator. Some of you can type it in straight like that. Some of you have to type it in like this. Some have to do this. If you older calculators, that's the only way you can type it in, right? Everyone's typing it in. Which one did we get? 3.58. And ln 20, if you see ln 20, you know if we have log and we don't have a base on it, what base is it? 10. If you have a log without a base, it's base 10. If you have a ln, you can rewrite this as y equals log base e of 20. So this, if I have a ln, I will always rewrite it as log base e. So the rest of this is going to be for homework because we're going to go through at the very beginning of class tomorrow. But I want you to go to your notes. Sinusoidal ones that we got stuff on yesterday because of the rainstorm. Oh. Sounds very similar. You have the cuss at the end. So when we talk about equations, if we want the A value, which is all of these, the amplitude is just the absolute value of A every single time. So off an equation, my amplitude of this equation is 3. So that means it goes up 3 and down 3 from the midline. The amplitude of this equation is the absolute value of negative 6, which is 6. Right? It's always just the absolute value of A. Then we have this one, which is 0.5. So it goes up 0.5 and down 0.5. So it's actually a very short graph, right? In total, it's 1, a distance of 1. So it's a very short graph. This one, the amplitude is a half because we do the absolute value of negative a half. So that one's also very small. It goes up 0.5 and down 0.5, so it's a distance of 1. It's a very short graph as well. And then back. Here. Okay, go back to this part. The next thing we're going to find is the B value. I call it the period. I call it the period because people want to say the B value is the period, which it's not. It's the period, which is just a made-up word. Okay? So the B value is just what the B value is. The B value in the equation up here, the B value is the number that sits, the number that sits, still the same color. The number that sits for the third time between the sign and the x. That is your B value. Okay? So we're going to go find the B value of each equation. So what's the B value of this one? What's between the sign and the x? Just a 1, right? So my B equals 1. And we're going to flip over. What's my B value of this one? My B equals 2, because it's what's found between my sign and my x. Okay, what about 3? We're in the notes. We're just a few pages in. So 3, what's the B value? 0.25, yeah. So it's between the sign and the x. What's my B value of this one, the period? 5. Now remember when we talked about the period was how long it took to repeat itself. Remember we found it on the graph? B doesn't get you the period. B is the period. B helps you to get the period, but it is not the period, right? B does not start with a P. It is the period. They will never ask you for the period, just so you know. So if they ask you for the period, you use B to get it. So that's why we're finding the B. Okay, then we go back. Okay, what if I ask for the period? Cool thing, fun fact, is they give you a formula on your formula sheet for the period. Do you see it saying, does it say P equals 2 pi over B, or does it say period equals 2 pi over B? Hit my window, right? It says what word here? It says period. So can you write P? and be like, they know what it is. No, they didn't even write P over there. So the period is 2 pi over B, okay? So if I want the period from an equation, it's actually way easier than from a graph, because you literally just take your B value and put it under 2 pi. So I've already found the B value for all of these. So the period will be easy. The period equals 2 pi over B, right? That's the formula. So the period of this one is 2 pi over what? 2 pi over 1, which is just 2 pi. Is it coming in? Perfect. All right. 2. The period is not 2. That is the period, correct? To get the period, it equals 2 pi over B. What is B in this case? 2. What happens with our 2's? They cancel, and the period is just pi. So this one repeats itself in 3.14159, blah, 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 blah. Right? Yeah, I feel like it. It just came again when we started learning the lesson. Okay. 3, the period is 2 pi divided by what? Now, if you put 2 pi divided by 0.25, no matter how hard you hit math enter, it's not giving you a fraction. Because fractions can only happen when you have non-repeating, non-terminating decimals. So go in your calculator, instead of 2 pi divided by 0.25, leave the pi out. Just go 2 divided by 0.25. And what do we get? 8. So this is not just 8, it's actually 8 pi. We bring the pi back. We just don't put the pi into our calculator or it'll cause mass confusion. Did you put 0.2 divided by 0.25?
I know we're not supposed to. It's just curious.
It's rounding. Your calculator must be set to some weird rounding and it's allowing it to do it. That's not good. We'll have to fix it. Okay. And then 4, period equals 2 pi divided by what? Then we go back.
Wait, so do we always like simplify it?
Yeah, if we can. Can't. 2 and 5 don't simplify.
So you only get rid of the pi if it's a decimal. You make it a lot simpler.
Yeah. Well, because the last one, the reason why it turned out to be an 8 is because we're doing this. We're doing 2 pi divided by a quarter. That's 0.25, which is 2 pi times 4 over 1. So it's 8 pi. So actually when you divide by a quarter, your number gets bigger. And you divide by a small fraction. It's between 0 and 1. Okay, then we're going to go back. Okay, the C value, if it exists, if there is a C, there is a horizontal phase shift. We're just going to say yes or no. The great thing is we don't have to find it, and you don't understand how crappy this is find. So just trust me that this is the best gift you could ever be handed, is to not have to find the C value. So if there is a C value, there's a horizontal phase shift, which means it's been moved to the right or the left. Okay? So let's look here. For 4, is there a horizontal phase shift? Does this one have a C value? No, because I could go, if I wanted to, this would be 1x plus 0, correct? So this would be no. Because the question was, is there a horizontal phase shift? No. Let's look at the next one. Is there a horizontal phase shift on this one?
Yes.
Yes. For 3, is there a horizontal phase shift on this one?
Yes.
Yeah. For this one, is there a horizontal phase shift?
Yes.
Okay, then we go back. Okay. D is our midline or our median value. We've talked about this, right? If I ask you for median value, you would just tell me what D is. 7, 4, 9, 8, 10. If I ask you for the midline, it's a line, so it needs Y equals the number. Agreed. Yeah. Funny. I wish I could be in on that joke. That would sound like a real good one. All right. So we need the median value, and then we need the equation of the midline. So what is the D of this one? It's 2, right? So this one here is the median value. This one here is the midline. The median value is just the number, so it's 2. What's the midline? Y equals 2. So one is just a value, and one is a Y equals line. What's the D on this one? Yeah, so this is 0 back here if there isn't anything. So my median value is 0. That's what this is, my median value. But my midline is Y equals 0. Okay, what's this one? My median value, bless you. -7. What's my midline? And for this one, what's my median value? 4. And what's my midline? Okay, separate sheet of paper. We're going to practice 2 of them. You just need a separate sheet of paper, or you can fill it out in the second, like over here if you'd like to. I don't really care. These are going to be your 2 equations. I want you to answer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to all of them. Both of them. Me too. Just so you know, the coast doesn't change anything. Still all done the same. Guys, what's up? Number 1, this is the amplitude. What's the amplitude of this equation? 3, because it's the absolute value of 8, right? And what's the amplitude of this one?
2.
2. It's the absolute value of -2, which is 2. Sure. 2 is B, the period. What is B for this first equation? 0.5. And what's B for this equation? 4. Then we use our B to get our period, correct? So the period of this one equals 2 pi divided by 0.5. And you don't need to memorize it. It's on your formula sheet, right? But when we type it in without the pi. So what's 2 divided by 0.5? 4 pi. And this one, the period, which is not short form, is 2 pi divided by 4, which reduces to pi over 2. 5, want to know if there's a horizontal phase shift. Does this one have a horizontal phase shift?
Yeah.
Yes, because it has a C value. What about this one?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, I want the median value. What is the median value of this equation? -1. And then my equation? And then what about this one? 6 and? Perfect. The last 15 minutes you can work on that booklet. It's due tomorrow at the very beginning of class. We're going to go through it. So work on that booklet I handed you at the beginning.